Okay, let's wrap everything up here. So there are a couple more important, or there's another important consideration that I want to draw your attention to. And then we're going to just review one more time and think about all the different terms and ideas that we've talked about. So this is a very important distinction. I want you to think about how random sampling and random assignment are different from each other. So you're hearing a lot now of this term random. And within an experimental design, we can distinguish between random sampling and random assignment. So these are two different things. We want you to really have an understanding that these are different things. These are not two terms that mean the exact same thing. We want you to understand how they're different from each other and how each one does something different for us within the context of an experiment. So random sampling, remember, deals with how you're obtaining your sample in the first place. You're using a random way of picking people from the population so that, if it's a purely random sample, a simple random sample, each person from the population has an equal chance of being part of the study. And you're using chance to decide who's going to be a part of the study. Random assignment happens after you have your sample. So after you have your sample for your study, you use some sort of chance mechanism to randomly allocate individuals to the different groups in your study, to the different treatments in your study. So, and remember, you're doing this because you're trying to set up a situation where you're mixing up all those possible lurking variables so that the groups are as similar as possible at the start of the study. And so the only thing that then ideally is differing among the groups is the treatment that you're applying to those different groups. So why do you think each is necessary? Why would we want to have a random sample? Why would we want to have random assignment in our study? Again, they're each going to do something different for us, and this is what we really want you to understand. So random sampling is going to allow you to take the results of your sample and generalize it beyond your study to a larger population. So if we have sampled randomly, we can be more confident that our sample is representative of a bigger population. So if we see certain results in our study with our sample, we can try to say something about the population from which that sample comes from. We can generalize those results or extend those results to the population. Random assignment, that's what's going to allow us to draw cause and effect conclusions. Because again, if we have randomly allocated people to groups, we are hopefully mixing up those lurking variables, creating groups that are as similar as possible in terms of all these possible lurking variables, so that the only thing that's differing among those groups is the treatment. And if you then see particular responses, you can be more confident that those responses were caused by that treatment and not by these lurking variables that you did not control for. Here is something I just wanted you to have. It's kind of a way of diagramming out all of this so that you can see why would we want random sampling, why would we want random assignment, what would happen if we don't have one of those things. Certainly you can have an experiment where you do not have a random sample. You start off with a sample of volunteers. In fact, I would argue a lot of published reports that you see in journals that describe experiments begin not with a purely random sample, but with a sample of volunteers. So that doesn't mean that you can't still reach important conclusions. Again, ideally, remember, I'm going to start down here, but each of these particular diagrams is kind of showing the same thing, just in a slightly different way. It's getting you to think about, do you have random sampling or random selection of subjects? Yes or no. Do you have random assignment? Yes or no. If you don't have that, what kinds of conclusions can you draw? If you do have that, what kinds of conclusions can you draw? So we ideally want to be in a situation like this, where we have random sampling and we have random assignment. If we have random assignment, we can draw a conclusion about cause and effect. If we have random sampling, we can generalize our conclusions back to the population. What if you have random assignment, but you don't have any random sampling? Well, again, you can still reach cause and effect conclusions, but only about the sample. So you wouldn't want to take those conclusions then and say something back to the population, because we know that the sample is not representative of the population. If you don't have random assignment, then you really don't have an experiment. You have more of an observational study. So you haven't been able to randomly assign people to groups, and that means you're not able to control for lots of possible lurking variables that could affect the response. The lurking variables are going to get all mixed up with the explanatory variables, so you're not going to really know what's leading to the response. So if there's no random assignment, there's no way for you to reach a cause and effect conclusion. All you can say is there's some correlation. These variables seem related to each other, but we really can't be sure what's causing what because we didn't have the control we would like to have of lots of possible lurking variables. Again, if you have random sampling and no random assignment, you can reach a conclusion about correlation and you can extend it to the population. If you have no random sampling and no random assignment, all you can say is that we see this correlation or this association between variables in this sample, but the sample, because it's not representative of the population, we can't extend those findings. And certainly we can't say one thing causes another because we didn't control all of these possible lurking variables. So again, understanding how random sampling and random assignment are two different things. They do different things for us within the context of an experiment. So we really want you to understand that distinction. Okay, so let's quickly review and I have kind of a new study here I just want to talk about just as a way of testing you on all the different terms and ideas that you learned about in the last several videos. And you might remember that we started out talking about that a study about dogs. We had the Purina dog food study, and I want it to be equal opportunity. I know some of you maybe don't like dogs, but you like cats. So let's talk about a cat study here. So could this be true? I heard about this and I thought, this sounds very interesting. I have to find out more about this. Here's a headline in the news. Watching cat videos at work could make you more productive. Here's the first sentence from this particular article. So listen to this. Feeling guilty about watching cat videos at work? Don't be. Science is here to tell you it's okay. So I needed to know about this study, and I found out some more details about this. Here's the actual research question of the study. Do individuals who are exposed to humorous stimuli persist longer at a task than individual? Let me start over. Do individuals who are exposed to humorous stimuli persist longer at a task than individuals who are not exposed to humorous stimuli? So that was the actual research question. And you're probably reading this and looking at this and thinking, I bet the humorous stimuli had something to do with cat videos. Well, let's see. So I found the study. It was conducted in Australia. The participants were 74 Australian college students. They were randomly assigned to one of three conditions, or one of three treatment groups. So one group watched a humorous video, one group watched a neutral video, and the third group watched a video that was meant to lead to the positive emotion of contentment. In a moment, I'll tell you the actual contents of the videos. But I believe, if I remember correctly, that they might have watched the video for roughly about 8 minutes or so. So they came into the situation, they were told they would watch a video, they watched the video. After viewing the video, they had to engage in a particular task that was meant to measure persistence. And it was an unsolvable task. So it was designed so that you could never come to the solution for the task. And they wanted to see how long people kept going and tried to work through the task before giving up. And if anyone is interested, I can share the original study with you if you want to learn more details about the task and such. But what they found was that those who watched the humorous video persisted significantly longer than those who watched the other two videos. Okay, so significantly longer, statistical significance. A difference unlikely to occur just by chance alone. Remember what that means. So if you see that word significantly, what does that mean? So, okay, well, I've given some things away here. I didn't mean to show all of this at once, but my animations are obviously not working right. So think about what the experimental video would be, or what the explanatory variable would be. Type of video. What would the response variable be? So it was a measure of persistence. So again, we just want you to get in the habit of, when you're given a description of an experiment, being able to pick out these different terms, being able to know, well, what was the explanatory variable? Remember, that's what the researcher was trying to manipulate. That's what they think has an impact on a certain response. The response variable, persistence. The response is what you're measuring at the end of the study. Why was it important to randomly assign students to groups? So think about why we would want random assignment. This is a way to control. For lurking variables. Maybe think about, in this particular situation, why would we want to have 3 different treatment groups? Think about why. So obviously the researchers thought watching a humorous video could have some impact on response. And maybe as I'm thinking more about this now in terms of talking about the explanatory variable, type of video certainly is something that was being manipulated, but we might even call this, so we could call the explanatory variable different things. I'm calling it type of video, but maybe we could call it humorous content. So think about what it was that the researchers were actually manipulating. What were they trying to see? What did they think would have an effect on something else? So they thought watching something that was humorous would actually lead to more persistence. So they were manipulating the humor content of the videos that they were showing. But why would they want to have all these conditions? Well, it could be that just watching any video is going to lead you to be more persistent. So let's have them watch something that's just neutral, just so they're watching a video that doesn't have that humorous content. It could be that it's not necessarily the humor in the video that's leading to persistence, but when you're watching something humorous, if you're feeling happy, if that makes you feel happy, if that makes you feel positive, if that makes you feel content, it could be those emotions that are actually leading to the persistence. So let's have another situation where we have another group who watches a video that's meant to lead to those emotions, that's not necessarily funny on top of that, to see if that makes a difference. And they were noticing that it was the humorous video that was leading to the persistence, not these other videos. So that gave them more evidence that it's actually the humor component that's leading to the response and not these other things. What do you think the humorous video was about? That's what I wanted to ask you. So remember the title of the media report. It was all about watching cat videos. So I was expecting, when I read this study, for them to be talking about cat videos. The humorous video was a clip from Mr. Bean. So if you know Mr. Bean, this is Mr. Bean. If you go to YouTube and you look up Mr. Bean, and I think it's called The Exam, there's an episode of Mr. Bean where he's taking an exam and he's trying to cheat on the exam. So they watched a little clip from that. Now, if you go to the actual episode, there is a cat toy in that episode. Mr. Bean brings his little Pink Panther toy with him to take the test, and he sets it down on the table. I guess maybe he thinks it's going to be good luck for him. So maybe that's what they were talking about when they said this was about cat videos. But again, you want to read those details. Don't just settle for the headlines, but actually go and try to find the studies to learn a little bit more about what was actually done. And then you can use those details to make any important decisions or to better understand that media report. Okay, again, I know we had a lot of videos for chapters 5 and 6, but I hope this is helpful to you in terms of understanding the content from those chapters. And I will see you again when we start up with our next set of content. Thanks, everyone.